welcome to the third podcast in this second series. We are M&H Consultants. M is Anita Menon, who is next to me, of course, as always. I am the H, Ron Howard. Today is a very important subject which may end up being two podcasts, and it's a subject that Anita is a bit of an expert on because she has a master's in supply chain management. Isn't that right, Anita?
Yes, absolutely. And I also spent about 8 to 9 years doing supply chain projects in this region and a lot of other countries in the world, whether it was warehousing, inventory, purchase. It's really a very interesting subject, very close to my heart. So what we're going to discuss today, Ron?
Well, how COVID has upset everybody's supply chain.
Yes, it's been such a hot topic among all the C-level executives. They think that supply chain is the disruption in their supply chain is the single biggest threat to the survival of their companies and the growth of their companies, as compared to important stuff like war or geopolitical disturbances in their country. So supply chain is absolutely very, very crucial subject that C-level executives have all their focus on. And
if you don't get your resources in on time, ready for the manufacturing process or the selling process, you're gone, basically.
Absolutely. And you know, I was having a chat with one of my friends who's a C-level executive in one of the leading logistics companies here in Bahrain, and he told me that at the port,
yes,
the congestion during the COVID era was so high and so bad that it was just a nightmare for them to manage it, you know, and there were such severe disruptions in supply and to different parts of the world from Bahrain, and for goods to come into Bahrain. So it created a lot of shortage as well in a lot of countries.
So what do you do, Anita? I mean, it's a trade-off between transport cost and warehousing cost. So while there's globalization going on and you can get what you want basically from China, right?
Yeah.
Then you're going to spend the money on cost because it's cheaper than warehousing.
You know, this whole globalization thing kind of took a backseat because the connectedness that globalization brought, that's the one that brought the entire world to their knees, because this virus, which knew no borders, it went and pecked at all the foundation, you know, in terms of how we do our business, how we live our lives, you know. So globalization is what actually brought the whole world to a grinding halt.
Is it the end of it? As COVID started, the end of a process called globalization? Don't answer that. I'm just going back to what I said about the trade-off between transport and warehousing. So when China was open, no COVID, didn't matter about the transport cost because it was cheap.
Right.
You could get your products in just on time.
Right.
Lean manufacturing, just in time manufacturing.
In time. Absolutely.
The materials arrive just as you need them for processing.
Yes.
If they're late, well, then your production suffers, your reputation suffers. So the other side of the coin there is you start warehousing.
Yes.
And warehousing costs money because you've got materials tied up, sitting there
as inventory,
as a buffer.
Yes.
Buffer inventory.
Yes.
That is there too early.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now, isn't it?
Yes, that's where we are now. But you know what? All the C-level executives believe that business continuity is more important than actually looking at how much cost they have to bear, because if you lose your customer, then it's just you're done. You're right.
There's a cost there. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So cost of acquiring a new customer is enormous. You know. So it's at this very moment, business continuity takes the forefront, and people don't really focus on trying to lessen the cost, their warehousing costs.
So you know how to make your next million. Build a warehouse,
yes,
or rent a warehouse if you can find somewhere.
Yes.
Because there's lots of demand for them.
Yes.
Because companies are now stocking that
Yes.
they were not doing before.
Absolutely. So this is such a big opportunity for companies who want to ensure that there is business continuity and there's no disruption in their supply chain. You know.
There is another way called onshoring, but I don't think it's really open to Bahrain
Yeah, it isn't really.
because apart from oil and natural gas and maybe a few other things, Bahrain does not really have the raw materials it needs
Yes.
to produce. Well, what do we produce here? Alba produces aluminium. The ore comes from
Australia. Yeah.
So onshoring maybe not available here, so it has to be warehousing.
Yes, the other big challenge that Bahrain faces, especially at the ports, where all this congestion happened and the disruption of supply chain happened, is they're still not, fully digitalized. They're
Yes.
still dependent on their legacy systems, and that is one of the primary reasons why they could not respond quickly. And they weren't agile in terms of responding to the disruption. So there's another opportunity there where these logistics companies, they need to digitalize. They need to be backed by enterprise softwares which make the supply chain visible end to end.
Logistics is not really something you think about unless it's not working anymore, isn't it?
Yes, that's the sad part really, but it can completely break or make your business. If your logistics is great, then you know that your customer fulfillment will happen completely, but if it's not, then your customers are going to just leave you.
So I would believe that in your business you haven't had any shortages because you don't deal in products.
No,
There's
yeah.
no processing of anything apart from information, is there?
Yes, that's true.
Well, of course, in the industries I've seen, there have been shortages.
Right.
There have been some improvements, and I'm
Right.
sure there will be, but whether businesses want to invest in warehousing now so that will never happen again.
Right.
As you say, losing customers is a very high cost, reputational damage as well.
I also feel that a very important aspect to keep in mind when you talk about supply chain is the supply relationship management. So if as an enterprise, do you assess your supply chain end to end in a way where you know who is your second and third tier supplier, and because at the end of the day it all starts from there, and if they are not going to fulfill your demand, then you're going to end up disrupting your supply chain in any case.
Well-
or for that matter, the single source supplier.
That's correct. I mean, a supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Yes.
And the other way you can look at it is try and find alternative supplies to be available when you need
Yes.
them. Not always easy again, but
Yes.
an option.
And I think that's where we come into the picture, Ron.
I was
as an
just about
advisory.
to ask you about that. How can we help, Anita?
Yes, so as an advisory, we can help the management understand and assess the supply chain end to end in a way where we evaluate all the operational risks around all the tiers of suppliers that a company would have, an organization would have, and thereby we'll be able to tell them, this is the kind of relationship you need to have with tier 1, this is the kind of relationship you need to have with tier 2 and tier 3 and so on. So this is how we would help them optimize their supply chain so that there's absolutely no risk. The second way that we can help them is also try and understand how resilient is that organization in responding to any kind of supply and demand risk. So that's another area where we can give our expertise.
I told you Anita was an expert in this, didn't I? And in part 2, of course, we may well talk about CSR and sustainability
Yes.
when it comes to supply chain, but we'll leave that for another time.
Yes. So this is a wonderful, interesting topic for me.
Yes.
And I don't think we'll finish in 2 parts. I think there'll be several other parts. We can take up case studies of projects that I've probably done in the past to help people understand, or companies or management, C-level executives understand how to plug supply chain problems.
I look forward to listening and being involved in those.
Thank you, Ron, for being such an interesting partner, asking the right questions.
Well, that's good to hear.
So-
I always respond to praise. Thank you, and yourself.
So, thank you for listening to us. This was just an introductory supply chain podcast. We've done a lot of work in this area, and we would like to continue building on these podcasts in the future.
Absolutely.
And if you want to be updated about what we're doing, please follow us on Instagram at mhconsultants_bh and on YouTube at mhconsultants. And thank you for watching.
Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.